Okay, well now let's look at starting a simple query wizard. Okay, so what we want to do is go up to where it says create. Okay, and if it doesn't take immediately, click the create tab again, and we want to create a query using the query wizard. But now, what is a query? A query is a question that you ask about the data that's stored in the database. So when you create the query, you tell Access which field you want and what criteria to use to select the records that will answer your question. Okay, and then Access displays the information based on that criteria that you set. And so I might, for instance, look at wanting to see how many visits or which visits apply to influenza. And so I would have criteria set that says influenza is the reason. The reason has to be influenza. Show me a list of all the records for visits that pertain to the reason influenza. And if I do that and I run that query, process it, then Access will show me a list of only the records that have influenza for the reason. It does not delete the other records. I just don't see the other records on screen at the time that I run that query, because that query just shows me visually on the screen what I've asked for, what I've asked to see. Okay, now I can clear that criteria off and use a different criteria or a combination of criteria to see certain records. What records do I have that meet these conditions? Okay. And if you just heard a bump, my hand just hit the microphone, so I do apologize. But anyway, so we do create, and we want to choose query wizard here. Okay, that opens up the new query wizard dialog box, and we want to make sure we have selected simple query wizard right here, and then we're going to click OK. And then the next window that pops up says, which fields do you want in your query? You can choose from more than one table or query. It defaults to the first table that's listed, or the one that was selected actually at the time that I open this up. And guess what? I only have one table at this point, so guess which one was the current table? Visit. You'll notice a drop-down list here. It would list all the other tables and queries that I would have in my database at this time, but visit is the only one, so that's all I see listed there. But notice that not only does it tell me the name of my object, it tells me what type. So if this was a query, it would say query, colon, and then the name of what that query is. Now in your textbook, in order to create the query, we have to look at the fields in this list box on the left. These are available fields. These are fields that exist in the table or query that is selected up here. We can send all of these fields over to the selected field side by clicking the double right arrows there. Notice that sends them all and in the order that they existed in. If I say, whoops, I don't want to do that, I want to send them all back, then I use the double left and it sends them all back. Or I can send one at a time and just say I'm only going to use certain fields. Or I can decide I want to use them all, but in a different order. And so that changes the order even though I'm using them all. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to send them all back. Okay. And when I send them all back, they're in the order that they're stored in the table. So which fields do I want here? I want the visit ID field, so I'm going to send that over. Okay. And then I want the visit date, so I'm sending that over. And then finally I want the reason. So there we go. Send that over. And I'm going to then click next. Okay. And it says, what title do you want for that query? Okay. Well, it defaults to the name that is in the object that I pulled the fields from, and then ends with the word query because we're designing a query or creating a query here. But your book in this particular instance wants you to change that and call it list. So I could backspace out here, or, oops, I'm sorry, or I can double click, which highlights one of the words, or I could triple click if you're good with that, which I'm not that good with. Gotta be fast on the draw. Easy thing to do is click at the end and drag over, and I'm gonna call this list. Okay. Alright, so now we say finish. And notice that here I didn't ask for specific records based on criteria. I just asked my query to show me certain fields. So in this case, I didn't really set criteria. I just narrowed down the amount of fields that I'm looking at. Now, notice I can see all the data that's in this column. I can see all of it that's here. But in my reason column, a lot of my data is being cut off, or what we call truncated. We can't see it. So guess what? I've got to go up here to the right border of the column that's too narrow, click after I get my crosshair, and drag over. Okay. Now, another way to do this, you see that I've dragged over and I'm still not wide enough here, is I can do an auto size where I go up here and get the crosshair on that border and double click. Then Access will look at the longest entry in that column and adjust the column width to that. Okay? Alright then. So notice again, we have our navigation bar down here, and we can maneuver through our query records just as we could with the table. Okay? Now, I'm going to close the visit list. Remember, don't use this button, that closes the whole application. I want to stay in the application, I want to stay in this database. So I'm going to click the close button for list. How do I know which one is for? List is my current tab right now, so guess what? If I point here, it says close list. If I go over here and I click on visit, and that's the current tab, now this X is for what? For visit. I want to close the list. I'm going to go over here and close list. Now it comes up, do you want to save changes to the layout of query list? And I'm going to say yes. Okay. And so I closed the list. I have not closed visit, so it's still there. So let's look at creating a simple form. Again, I want to create, so guess where I go? I'm at the create box. I can be on any row in this table. I'll create box, and I'm going to create a form. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to choose form, okay? Alright. And automatically the form tool created a form for me. It chose, by default, it chose the name of the object that I was creating the form from, which happened to be my visit table, and it applied that object's name as the title of my form. And then it lists for me automatically, vertically, all the fields that make up my table and place it into the form. And that's a good thing, because if I'm doing data entry, I don't want to have to look at row after row after row after row all on one screen of data. I want to be able to look at one record at a time, so when I enter in the data, I'm not getting crossed over on any other rows or anything like that. And it makes inputting the data a lot simpler. And so here we are. This is what I would see if I was using this form to input the visit ID, visit information. like the ID, the patient ID, the visit date, the reason, and whether or not it's a walk-in. And I keep hitting my microphone. I'm so sorry. I'll try not to do that again. I have it placed in front of me so that it's being held in front of me so I can use my hands. So here we are. So to navigate this form, again, you have your navigation bar down here. It works the same way. And you can see as I click on different things, the number of records, the number of the record changes down here. The data you'll see change. I can change to the end, go to the last record. Here we are, and go to the first record. And here's one we haven't talked about, and it's true even if you're in data sheet view or if you're in a query, data sheet view of your table or your query, or in a form. If I choose blank, guess what? It brings me a blank record at the end, adds it as the last one, and allows me to enter new data. I really don't want to do that, so I'm not really going to add anything right there. Okay, so I'm going to close, actually I'm going to save this first. Let me save it. So what we want to do is on the quick access toolbar, we're going to click the save button. Okay, so over here, and it comes up and says, I use this button up here, save as, and we're going to call this data. Okay. Alright, so you see data comes up here. That does not affect the title here. Data, I'm going to close data. And you know what I did? I named it incorrectly. Well, Ms. Tucker, why don't you get it straight when you do it? Well, here's part of our lessons that your book is not showing you. So what if I realize, oh man, I made a mistake. I meant to call that visit data instead of just data. Well, I'm going to go over here to my navigation pane, and it's like, well, that's collapsed. I can't see anything. I'm going to go up here to the shutter bar. I'm going to open this back up, and look what happens here. Here's my visit table. Remember that query called list that we created is right here, and here's data. Do you remember how we can change the name of an object? Well, data is not open. If it were, I could not change the name. Remember what happened with table 1 when I wanted to change it to visit? So we have to make sure that object whose name we want to change is not open up here. Then I can right click here, and I can say rename, and I can call this visit data. How about that? Just that simple. Okay, so now we want to create a simple report. And so we're going to create, and we've got report, so we're going to click on report. Okay, and here we go. Because we were doing it from forms, look what happened. Visit data. Okay, I don't really want that. Okay, so I'm not going to keep that. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to close that. And do you want to save changes to the design of the report visit data? And I say no, because I don't want that. I'm going to go right here. I want visit as my table. Now I'm going to try to create again. I'm going to do report. And notice I've got visit here because it's picking up the name of the table. Okay, so here we go. I want to resize these columns because you see these dotted lines here? It shows what my boundaries are in my margins. So if I were to print this, it wouldn't print on 1 page or 2 pages or whatever. It would print however many pages it takes here, but then it's going to have to print additional pages to pick up this side over here. So I don't want all of that. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to resize the visit ID and patient ID columns because we don't need all that space in there. Okay, so I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to drag this over, everything here, so I can get that.